$100 million. Leave me. At the company's IPO celebration banquet, my fiancé publicly embraced his first love and flung the check at my face. I didn't cry or make a scene. I picked up the check, turned, and walked away. He thought I had accepted my fate. The next day, he even called to mock me. Without me, you're nothing. On the other end of the line, his assistant screamed in terror. Director Joe, something terrible has happened. At the Huaca Biotech IPO celebration banquet hall, the crystal chandelier refracted countless shards of light, each beam like an icy blade cutting into my skin. The air shimmered with bubbles from expensive champagne and the restrained laughter of the successful. And I, Emily Johnson, stood in the shadowed corner like a misplaced ghost, clad in a faded lab coat that was glaringly out of place. I hadn't had time to change. To ensure the IPO roadshow data was flawless, ID spent 72 consecutive hours in the lab. It was John Wilson who called, urging me to come, insisting the celebration couldn't start without me. He said, Emily, our good days are finally here. Hurry, everyone's waiting for you. So I came, and then I watched him, my fiancé, John Wilson, founder and CEO of Huaca Biotech, standing under the spotlight. He wore bespoke handmade tailoring, his hair perfectly groomed, a triumphant smile on his handsome face. Raising his glass, his voice amplified through the microphone carried just the right mix of excitement and humility. Thank you to all our investors for your unwavering support. Thank you to every member of our team for their tireless dedication. He thanked everyone. The project manager, the marketing director, even his executive assistant. Every me was spoken with weight. Except mine. The chief scientist who turned the regeneration factor technology from a concept into reality, who burned through countless all-nighters, who poured 10 years of her lifeblood into this. In that moment, my heart felt crushed by an invisible fist. Stopping its beat, he continued, his tone suddenly shifting, his gaze softening with an impossible tenderness. But that tenderness wasn't for me. He reached out and pulled a woman in a white evening gown, graceful and elegant, to his side. Sophia Brown, his first love. A renowned gallery art director. Camera flashes exploded, framing them like a perfect painting. Here, the one I most wish to thank is the light of my life, Ms. Sophia Brown. John's voice was thick with emotion. It was she who, during my darkest hours, gave me the courage to persevere. She is my sole motivation. Every achievement of Huaca shines for her alone. The room fell silent, then erupted in thunderous applause and cheers. I stood rooted, feeling the blood in my veins turn to ice, inch by inch. Sole motivation. What were the 10 years we spent eating instant noodles in a leaky basement lab? Then, where was he when I used my parents' retirement savings to cover equipment costs because funding was tight? So, the shared dream he always spoke of was just my solo performance all along. Amidst the applause, John, holding Sophia, walked through the crowd towards me. Gone was the tenderness from his face, replaced by a cold, condescending superiority. Sophia nestled against him, her eyes meeting mine, brimming with the pity and triumph of the victor. The guests fell silent, all eyes fixed on me, waiting for my collapse. John stopped before me. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a check, holding it between two fingers. The gesture was slow, deliberate, dripping with contempt. Then, he let go. That flimsy piece of paper fluttered down like a dead leaf, landing beside my shoe, stained with lab chemicals. Emily Johnson. His voice, though not loud, cut clearly through the silence, reaching every ear. These 10 years you've worked hard. He paused. This $100 million. It's your compensation. From now on, we're even. 100 million. 10 years of youth. 10 years of hard work. In his eyes, are only worth this 100 million. Sophia Brown's lips curled into a smug smile. She mouthed to me, "You lost." The entire hall fell dead silent. Those gazes turned from watching a show to blatant ridicule. I could hear their whispers. So she's just a worker. I thought she was the boss wife. 100 million isn't small. I'd be laughing in my dreams if it were me. John is still sentimental. This woman really hit the jackpot. I didn't cry. Nor did I make a scene. I didn't even look at John Wilson's disgusting face. I just slowly bent down. Everyone thought I would burst into tears or humbly pick up that check. But I merely extended a fingertip and, with an almost elegant gesture, pinched that thin piece of paper. Then, I lifted it to my lips and gently blew away the non-existent dust on it. This action plunged the hall into an eerie silence once more. I raised my head, my gaze calmly sweeping over John and Sophia. Finally settling on John's eyes, I nodded calmly to him. Okay, just one word. After a pause, I added another sentence, my voice soft but every word crystal clear. Wish you a happy marriage. After saying that, I didn't linger, turned around, and walked toward the banquet hall's doors. My back was ramrod straight. Behind me came John's uncontrollable sneer and the guests' relieved murmurs. In their eyes, I was a gold digger dazzled by money, a graceful loser. I walked out of the hotel, the cold night wind hitting my face. Lifting my long hair, I looked down at the check in my hand, that long string of zeros glaring under the streetlights. I smiled. That smile didn't reach my eyes, but it was bone-chilling. John, do you think this is the end? No. This is the start of war. Back at the home I shared with John, that love nest hung with our photos and filled with models he adored, I felt nothing but nausea. I had no attachment whatsoever. Locking all contact with John was just the first step. I walked into the study, which was also my mini-lab. I pulled out a suitcase and started packing. My personal clothes were few. Over these 10 years, I'd invested almost all my money into research and development. What I wore was always just a few t-shirts and jeans for easy movement. What I truly valued were those experimental materials. Stacks of notebooks filled with my dense calculations and experimental ideas. 3 encrypted external hard drives storing all the core code and raw data from the FIRS. T to 4th generation of the regeneration factor. These were the real lifeline of Huaca biology. I carefully placed them into a fireproof and shockproof safe. After packing that up, I looked around. On the walls hung various young entrepreneur trophies John had won. In the living room was a limited edition sports car model he'd spent millions on. In the walk-in closet were his hundreds of designer suits. None of the inputs were the same. I bought them. Oh, no. I should say, I bought them with the money earned from the technology one developed. I sneered coldly, dragging my suitcase and safe, and closed the door of the place I had lived for 8 years, without looking back. Exactly at midnight, I sat in the hotel suite I had booked in advance and dialed my lawyer. Robert Smith. Robert Smith. You can initiate it. The voice of Robert on the other end was steady. Emily Johnson. Are you sure? Once initiated, this agreement will take effect immediately, with no room for reversal. I'm sure. My voice was calm. Okay. I will immediately submit the documents to Huaca Biotech's legal department and relevant patent authorities. After hanging up, I looked at the dazzling city lights outside the window. John Wilson, you're probably still celebrating your victory with your first love. Enjoy your last few hours of wealth and glory. The next morning, the glaring sunlight woke me up. I had slept the most peacefully in 10 years. My phone was vibrating wildly on the nightstand. It was an unknown number. I answered without speaking. On the other end came John Wilson's voice, hoarse from a hangover, filled with unmasked triumph and sarcasm. Emily, don't regret it. I know you're hiding in some corner crying right now. I tell you, without me, you're nothing. You can't even afford next month's rent. Be sensible and stop bothering me. 100 million is enough for a woman like you to live on for a lifetime. I listened quietly, letting him vent his ridiculous sense of superiority. After he finished, I slowly replied, Is that so? My voice was so calm it had no fluctuation. Then, well see, just as I was about to hang up, A panicked scream came from the other end. The voice of his assistant Chris Anderson. "John. Something's wrong. John." John Wilson impatiently roared. "What's the big fuss? Can't you see him on the phone?" "John. Our servers. The core code library on our servers has been wiped. Highest privilege access is denied." I could hear John Wilson's breathing instantly become heavy. "What? Hacked. Get the tech department to restore it immediately. A bunch of idiots." The assistant, voice trembling with tears, said, "It's not a hack, John. It's an urgent notice just sent by the legal department. All our company's core technology patents, including all patent rights for the regenerative factor series, have been fully and legally transferred as of midnight today." The assistant seemed afraid to say the name. Their voice stuck in their throat. John Wilson roared into the phone. "Transferred under whose name? Speak up." "Under the personal name of Emily Johnson. Anne. Our life-saving regenerative factor technology. The technology licensing agreement we signed with Emily Johnson has also been unilaterally terminated because of certain clauses. John. We're just an empty shell now." Bang! A loud crash. I could clearly hear the sound of John's phone smashing on the ground and shattering into pieces. Immediately after, Sophia Brown's scream and a chaotic commotion followed. I hung up the phone expressionlessly, walked over to the huge floor-to-ceiling window and pulled open the curtains. A brand new sun was bursting forth from the horizon, radiating brilliantly. I took a deep breath. The air carried the fresh scent after the rain. "John. A new war has begun." My phone started ringing frantically. It was his office landline. His other private numbers. One by one, slowly and deliberately, I blocked them all. Then turned it off. The world was quiet. John found me at 3 in the afternoon. I was sitting in the executive lounge on the hotel's top floor, leisurely sipping afternoon tea while discussing my future career plans with a headhunting company. He looked like an enraged beast, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, his suit jacket crumpled over his arm, completely devoid of yesterday's confident demeanor. He must have tracked me down through my credit card transaction records. "Emily." He shouted my name, rushed over, and grabbed my wrist, with such force that it almost crushed my bones. The surrounding guests were disturbed, casting sideways glances. "Why did you do this? You bitch. Haven't I been good to you? Isn't 100 million enough?" His spittle almost sprayed onto my face. I frowned in disgust and yanked hard. Perhaps because he hadn't slept all night and was weakened, or he didn't expect me to resist. I actually shook off his grip. 5 distinct red marks instantly appeared on my wrist. I looked up, my gaze colder and fiercer than his. 100 million. I scoffed, my voice soft but piercing. "John, are you asking me if 100 million is enough to buy out 10 years of my youth? Or if it's enough to buy out the life of your Huaca biotech?" He choked on my words, frozen in place. From the bag I carried, I slowly threw out a stack of documents, copies of that agreement. The papers scattered at his feet, exactly like the check he threw at me yesterday. "Open your damn eyes and see clearly." I tore off all my gentle disguises, my voice suddenly rising sharply. "At the beginning of the venture, we signed the final ownership agreement of technology patents in black and white. It clearly states that all technologies I led in developing, the ultimate ownership of the patents, is under my name, Emily Johnson. You were in charge of operations. I was in charge of technology. Before you fully deliver on that 40 of company equity, I only exclusively licensed the technology to Huacu Biology. It was you, to make room for your noble first love Sophia Brown, to let her marry you, the self-made business giant. In grand style, you delayed delivering my equity before the IPO. It was you who first tore up our agreement." John Wilson's face instantly turned pale. He stared fixedly at the document on the floor, his eyes filled with disbelief. He probably never took this document seriously, signed back then to placate me and let me focus on RD. In his eyes, I was just his appendage. My talent, my technology, were naturally his. Looking at his devastated state, I felt it wasn't enough. I slowly raised my hand and took off the black-framed glasses that had been with me for 10 years. These glasses were both a tool for me to do experiments conveniently and a disguise to hide all my sharp edges. I casually placed the glasses on the table, met his shocked gaze, and revealed a cold smile. Do you really think that you, who only knows how to make PPTs, only knows how to talk big on stage, can't even recite the most basic molecular formula of regeneration factor, could create all this out of thin air? My voice was soft, but every word pierced his heart. John Wilson, you were never any business genius. You are just a puppet. I pushed to the front. The word puppet was like a heavy hammer, smashing hard on John's most fragile and proud self-esteem. He staggered back 2 steps, his face turning from pale to green, his body swaying unsteadily. He looked at me, fear appearing in his eyes for the first time. He might have just realized that the woman before him was not the Emily he could manipulate at will or dismiss with money. He began to soften, his voice changing tone. Emily, it's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. He tried to grab my hand again, but I dodged it in disgust. I just wanted to give you a surprise after the IPO. That 40 equity, I've long prepared it. And that 1 billion. It's pocket money for you. This lie, even he didn't believe it. Give me back the technology. Okay, let's start over. I'll break up with Sophia Brown immediately. I'll give you more money. No. I'll give you half the company. No. 60%. Emily, please. He began to ramble incoherently, like a gambler who had lost all his chips. I coldly interrupted him. Too late. My voice was calm without a ripple. From the moment at the celebration banquet, in front of everyone, you threw that check at my feet. Kwaku biology, in my eyes, was already dead. And you, John, the first said, looking at his bloodless face, word by word, don't even have the qualification to be buried with it. Kwaku Biology's core technology patents changed hands overnight. The company reduced to an empty shell. New unicorn suspected of fraudulent IPO. Founder John Wilson deeply mired in trouble. The day after I pulled the rug out from under them, such headlines flooded all financial sections. Kwaku Biology's stock price opened limit down. Countless investors wailed online, cursing John Wilson as a scam artist. The company's main phone lines and PR department were flooded with calls. John Wilson completely lost his mind. His first move was to assemble the most elite legal team in the industry, aggressively threatening to sue me for commercial misappropriation and theft of trade secrets. However, when my lawyer, Robert Smith, slammed the original copy of the technology patent final ownership agreement onto their Tablia document with crystal-clear clauses, ironclad wording, and John Wilson's own signature, their luxurious legal team instantly fell silent. The agreement explicitly stated that all patents belonged solely to me, with an additional clause: should John Wilson fail to fulfill his equity commitment before the IPO, or engage in any form of breach or betrayal, I had the unilateral, unconditional right to terminate all technology licenses without any legal liability. The same signature had once given so readily to reassure me now filled him with utter despair. With the legal route blocked, John Wilson resorted to his favorite tactic: a media war. He spent lavishly, hiring trolls and influencers to launch a vicious smear campaign against me online. Scorned lover steals company assets to take revenge on ex-boyfriend, exposing the venomous woman behind Huaka Biotech, stopping at nothing to climb the ladder. Overnight, I was painted as a scorned woman who would destroy everything after failing to get love. Photoshopped images of me flooded the internet, accompanied by fabricated rumors about my chaotic private life. I made no public response to these slanders. Arguing with a madman would only lower my own standards. Instead, through Robert, I quietly submitted a portion of the evidence to the Securities Regulatory Commission and major financial media outlets. Only 2 items. First, The statement in Huaca Biotech's IPO prospectus claiming the company possesses full, independent intellectual property rights over its core technology was false. Second, as the sole holder of the core technology patents, I had never transferred ownership to the company. John Wilson was suspected of fraudulent IPO practices. This instantly stirred up a hornet's nest. It was no longer a simple commercial dispute. It had escalated to criminal fraud. The Securities Regulatory Commission immediately announced an investigation into Huaca Biotech. The company's stock price began an endless series of limit-down plunges. Shareholders who once idolized John Wilson now circled him like sharks smelling blood. An emergency board meeting was convened. The atmosphere thick enough to drip. John Wilson, you owe us an explanation. Why is the company's core technology in the hands of an outsider? Fraudulent IPO. Do you realize the consequences? Well, I'll go down with you. Immediately. Get those patents back, or you can start packing your things. Harassed and cornered by the board members, John Wilson was driven to the brink of collapse. He came to me again. This time, he didn't dare storm the hotel. Instead, he waited humbly outside my building all night. When I stepped out the next morning, I saw him unshaven, eyes bloodshot, looking like a stray dog. Beside him stood two others, my parents. My heart sank at the sight. My mother's eyes reddened the moment she saw me. She rushed over and grabbed my hand. Emily, how could you be so reckless? John explained everything to you. It's all a misunderstanding. Give him back what's his. Stop this nonsense. My father's face was stern. Emily Johnson, he said gravely. What did we teach you? Integrity matters. John treated you well. How could you do something so destructive to his career? John Wilson stood nearby, instantly adopting an expression of wounded affection. Uncle and aunt, it's all my fault. I didn't handle it well and let Emily Johnson be wronged. Emily, listen to me explain. There's really nothing between Sophia Brown and me. It was all for business networking. Watching them echo each other, I felt utterly absurd and heartbroken. My own parents didn't ask what wrongs I had suffered or how I had been doing these past 10 years. Their first reaction was to blame me and tell me to consider the bigger picture. In their eyes, their daughter's dignity and happiness were far less important than a promising son-in-law. I didn't argue with them. I just took out my phone from my bag and pressed play. The recording clearly captured John Wilson's voice. It was the call he made to me yesterday morning. Without me, you're nothing. You can't even afford next month's rent. $10 million is enough for a woman like you to live on for a lifetime. The contemptuous, mocking tone echoed through the quiet hotel lobby, jarringly sharp. My parents' faces froze instantly, mouths agape, unable to utter a word. John's face turned ashen in an instant. He probably never dreamed I would record it. I turned off the recording and stared coldly at him. John, do I need to play the video for Uncle and Aunt right here? Showing how you threw that $10 million check at my feet during the victory celebration. He trembled all over, lips quivering, unable to speak a word. I turned to my parents, my voice devoid of any emotion. Dad, Mom, this is the good son-in-law who treated me so well. As you put it, from today on, I don't want to hear this person's name again. With that, I didn't look at any of them and walked straight into the waiting taxi. As the car drove off, I saw in the rearview mirror John slump to his knees in despair, while my parents stood frozen, helpless. I took out my phone and texted John. The game has only just begun. Enjoy the bitter fruit you've sown. Just as John was being cornered by me, running into walls and overwhelmed, an unexpected person found me. Michael Taylor, founder of Far Star Capital, one of the top investors in the country, and John's biggest business rival. Rumors said he had a sharp eye and ruthless tactics. A true business titan. He didn't frantically call me like John did. Instead, he politely sent a meeting invitation through Robert Smith. The location was a highly private Chinese-style club. When I arrived, he was already there, dressed in a well-tailored dark gray suit without a tie. His demeanor was steady yet sharp. Seeing me, he stood up and offered his hand. Dr. Emily. Hello. I'm Michael. His hand was warm and firm, his eyes showing no trace of condescension, only equal scrutiny and appreciation. Mr. Michael. Hello. We sat down, and the tea master brewed us premium de Hong Pao tea. He got straight to the point, without any preamble. Dr. Emily, I've been paying attention to you for a long time. I was a bit surprised. He smiled and continued. Ever since Huaku Bio released the first-generation regenerative factor technology, I've been watching. I found it strange back then the foresight and rigor shown in that technology were completely different from John's flashy, glory-seeking style. It wasn't until the recent news came out that it clicked. The true soul of Huaku Bio is you. Those words stirred something in me. For the past 10 years, everyone has only seen John Wilson on stage. Only this person has seen through the phenomenon to the essence. He pushed a document toward me. This is a cooperation plan I prepared for you. You can take a look first. I opened the document, and my pupils contracted slightly. Farstar Capital invested 2 billion renminbi to establish an entirely new biotech company. I contributed all my core technology as equity, holding 51 of the shares. I would serve as the chief scientist and co-CEO of the new company, with veto power, especially in all research and development-related decisions. The terms of this contract were so generous it was jaw-dropping. More importantly, it represented absolute respect and trust in me. John had spent 10 years refusing to honor that 40 equity. Yet Michael Taylor, a stranger who had only met me once, was willing to hand over absolute control of the company directly. I closed the document and looked up at him. Why me? Michael picked up his teacup, took a small sip, and gazed at me with intense eyes. Because genius deserves the best price. Also because I want to see what brilliance a great technology can unleash in the hands of someone who truly understands it, rather than being used as a tool for fame and reputation by a speculator. His words struck a chord with me. I didn't hesitate any longer. I agree. Right then, under the witness of lawyers, we signed this cooperation agreement. For the new company, I named it Phoenix Biotech, symbolizing rebirth from the ashes. Michael's action was astonishing. Right after the signing ceremony, he immediately arranged a press conference. It happened on the afternoon when Huaku Biotech stock hit its 7th consecutive limit down. At the press conference, media gathered. Camera flashes bright as daylight. For the first time, I officially stepped into the spotlight as Emily Johnson, chief scientist and co-CEO of Phoenix Biotech. I took off my lab coat and black-rimmed glasses, changing into a sharp white business suit prepared by Michael's team, with a polished and commanding makeup look. The moment I walked onto the stage, I could see the reporters' eyes filled with undisguised astonishment and confusion. They probably struggled to connect this cool, confident woman before them with the crazy jealous woman smeared in the news days earlier, standing behind the podium. I skipped any preamble and dropped a bombshell directly. Phoenix Biotech will officially release the upgraded Regeneration Factor 2.0 technology globally within 3 months. This technology will achieve cell repair and regeneration efficiency over 5 times higher than all current market comp. Editors including Huaku Biotech's Regeneration Factor 1.0. At the same time, production costs will be reduced by 70%. As soon as these words were out, the room erupted in an uproar. All the reporters went wild, flooding in with questions like a tidal wave. A 5-fold performance improvement and 70% cost reduction. This news was tantamount to a death sentence for Huaku Biotech. I looked at the flashing lights below, knowing that from this moment on, the offensive and defensive dynamics had completely reversed. John, your good days are over. The effect of the press conference was immediate. The next day, Huaku Biotech's stock hit limit down again at the opening. Without a doubt, what was different this time was that no one held any illusions about it anymore. John was completely backed into a corner. He thought I had only taken away those few patent documents. Naively, He believed that as long as the RD team was still there, he could get them to replicate my technology, at least to barely keep the company running. So, he summoned all employees from the RD department, offered triple salaries, and demanded they replicate the regeneration factor technology in the shortest time possible. This news was secretly told to me by David Clark, my senior fellow apprentice and head of Huaku Biotech's RD department. When I received his call, I was in Phoenix Biotech's new office, discussing laboratory design plans with Michael. David Clark's voice on the other end of the phone was full of anger and helplessness. Junior sister Emily, that idiot John Wilson has gone crazy. Does he think doing scientific research is like buying cabbages at the market? Copying just like that, without your original data and algorithm models. We can't even figure out the most basic medium ratio. He's been scolding people in the department every day, saying we're useless and getting paid for doing nothing. The guys are almost driven crazy by him. I listened quietly. Having an amateur lead the professionals is the most fatal flaw of speculators like John. He'll never understand that behind a top-notch technology, it takes years of accumulation and countless trials and errors. He only sees the results but never respects the process. I only said one thing into the phone. Senior brother, I have a brand new research project, a brand new laboratory, and a brand new future here. Do you want to do something truly great together? There was a full half-minute of silence on the other end of the phone. Then, David's voice rang out again, filled with uncontrollable excitement and determination. Yes, junior sister, tell us what to do. It's very simple, I said. At 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, bring all the trustworthy guys to the downstairs of Phoenix Biotech. I'll be waiting for you. The next day, at the headquarters of Huaku Biotech, the most dramatic scene in the company's history took place. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, led by the RD department supervisor David, the entire core RD team, a total of 37 people, collectively submitted their resignation letters to the HR department. Then, they packed up their personal belongings and walked out of the building where they had worked hard for many years without any hesitation. The HR manager was so shocked that he rushed to the top floor president's office without even knocking on the door. Mr. John, something terrible has happened. All the people in the RD department have resigned. It is said that when John got this news, he was stunned for a full minute. Then, like a madman, he smashed all the things in the office that could be smashed. The precious antique vases, the sports car models he treasured, the huge floor-to-ceiling windows. The entire president's office was in a complete mess. He finally understood. What I took away was not just the technical patents. What I took away was the root, the soul, and the hearts of the people of Huaku Biotech. Without the technology and having lost all the core RD talents, Huaku Biotech couldn't even maintain the update and iteration of its existing products. It completely became a worthless empty shell. At this time, in front of the brand new building of Phoenix Biotech, I looked at David and the more than 30 familiar faces behind him. Their eyes were all shining with the light of trust and expectation. Dr. Emily, they shouted excitedly when they saw me. Finally, we can work hard with you. I looked at them, and a warm current welled up in my heart. This was my real team. I nodded heavily. Welcome home. Seeing that John's downfall was imminent and her dream of becoming a wealthy socialite was about to come to nothing, Sophia finally couldn't sit still. She launched a series of crazy and stupid counterattacks. First, she posted an emotional long post on her social media, portraying herself as an innocent, kind victim burdened by love. She claimed she and John Wilson were truly in love but faced crazy revenge from me, the vicious ex. She blamed all of John's failures on my malice and jealousy. The article was heartfelt, paired with a few tearful selfies, which indeed fooled many uninformed netizens into sympathy. The hashtag Heartbroken for Sophia Brown trended on social media, boosted by her hired trolls. She even photoshopped images of me entering hotels intimately with different men, spreading rumors about my chaotic private life to attack my character. I didn't even bother to respond personally to such clownish antics. Michael Taylor's PR team wasn't for show. Without consulting me, they launched the swiftest, most effective counterattack. Instead of arguing with the trolls or debunking the crude photoshops, they directly contacted a top art media outlet in the country and presented solid evidence. The evidence showed that Sophia's award-winning painting First Snow, which won her a national art exhibition gold medal in college and made her famous, was actually plagiarized from a deceased classmate. Once this scandal broke, public opinion flipped instantly. How credible could a creative director who rose by stealing others' work be? Sophia's image as a talented artist shattered completely. She went from a pitted first love to a universally condemned art thief. Her gallery quickly distanced itself by firing her in a public statement. Wealthy heirs and celebrities who once adored her now avoided her like the plague. Sophia Brown was utterly ruined. Cornered. She resorted to the most desperate act: corporate espionage. She probably thought that since I used technology to crush John, she could steal my new tech the same way for a comeback. She bribed a newly hired janitor at my company to sneak into my office late at night and copy data from my computer. All of this was within Michael's and my expectations. Phoenix Biotech's security system, designed by a world-class team hired by Michael, could detect even a fly entering, let alone a janitor. I set a trap. On my work computer, I deliberately placed encrypted fake data titled Regeneration Factor 2.0 Core Algorithm Final Version. But it was just meaningless gibberish, along with a tracking program that triggered an alarm immediately upon copying. On the night of their planned exchange, the bribed janitor sneaked into my office and inserted a USB drive into my computer, unaware that every move was live-streamed via hidden cameras to Michael, me, and the police. When he and Sophia met in the underground garage for the money for USB handoff, I arrived with police and a swarm of reporters drawn by the news. Camera flashes lit up Sophia's terrified, twisted, despair-filled face clearly, caught red-handed. The charge of corporate espionage could land her in prison for years. As police handcuffed and led her away, she acted crazed, screaming John's name. "John, save me. You told me to do this. Save me." The next day, John quickly issued a cold statement through his nearly defunct company to protect himself. It declared that all of Miss Sophia Brown's actions were her own, with no connection to the company or Mr. John Wilson himself. Mr. Wilson claimed he knew nothing about her deeds and strongly condemned them. When disaster strikes, everyone flees. How ironic. This was the true love Sophia gambled everything for. I watched as Sophia was being escorted onto the police car in a sorry state on the news. There wasn't a shred of satisfaction in my heart, only utter indifference. Stupid people always pay the price for their own stupidity. The delisting and liquidation process of Huaca Biotech was even faster than expected. Due to fraudulent listing, the company not only had to face sky-high fines from the CSRC but also compensate shareholders for huge losses. All of John's assets, including his properties and luxury cars, were frozen and auctioned off by the court. Even so, his debts still exceeded his assets. Overnight, he went from a newly minted billionaire to a penniless man drowning in debt. He started drinking heavily every day and hid in a shabby rental apartment, too ashamed to show his face. It was said that he kept looking at our old photos and kept muttering my name, full of remorse. Finally, on a stormy night with thunder and lightning, he broke down, soaked to the bone. He looked like a water ghost as he showed up downstairs of my new apartment. He knelt in the cold rain, looking up at the sky, and kept shouting my name. Emily, Emily Johnson. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please come back. Okay, please come back. I can't live without you. I don't want the company anymore. And I don't want the money either. I don't want anything. I just want you. His cries were as heart-wrenching as a cuckoo's blood-curdling wails. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window on the 23rd floor, wearing a soft silk nightgown and holding a cup of warm milk in my hand. I coldly watched the tiny and humble figure downstairs. Michael came from behind and gently draped a warm cashmere cardigan over my shoulders. He didn't ask me anything. He just quietly stood beside me, giving me the firmest and silent support. Downstairs, John's cries grew louder and louder, attracting the community security guards. He struggled like a madman and refused to leave. He was still shouting about the tough times we had shared. Emily, have you forgotten? The days when we ate instant noodles and shared a bun together. Have you forgotten that you said you would accompany me to build a technology empire of our own? Our dreams. Have you forgotten all of them? I watched his clumsy performance expressionlessly and only found it ridiculous. Dreams. His dream was to step on my shoulders to embrace his first love. I took out my phone. I didn't answer his call, nor did I go downstairs to see him. I just sent him one last message. John. Stop acting. What you miss has never been me as a person. What you miss is the tool that could selflessly dedicate itself to you, let you step on its shoulders to achieve success, and satisfy all your vanity. What a pity. That tool has been independently upgraded and has permanently blocked you. A lousy user. After sending the message, I drew the curtains, shutting out all the noise outside. I said to Michael beside me, let the security guards handle it. I don't want to see him anymore. Michael nodded and made a phone call. Soon, the cries downstairs stopped. I knew that John's self-directed struggle to win back his wife ended in a hurry without even a decent audience. And I didn't even bother to scatter the ashes for him. 3 months later, the global launch event for Phoenix Biotech's Regeneration Factor 2.0 was held grandly at the National Convention Center. The venue was packed to capacity, with top global tech media, capital giants, and representatives from medical institutions gathered together. The day before the launch, I made a decision. I had my assistant send an invitation to John Wilson. It was for the most prestigious VIP seat in the front row, dead center. Michael Taylor seemed puzzled. Why do you still want to see him? I smiled and said, I want him to witness firsthand what he threw away. I want him to personally crown my glory. On the day of the launch, John really came. He wore an ill-fitting, cheap suit, with graying hair and dull, clouded eyes, completely out of place among the impeccably dressed elites around him. He looked like a down-and-out actor who had wandered onto the wrong set, sitting there uneasily, utterly distraught. When the launch began and I walked onto the stage in a custom-made red gown, confident and composed, the spotlight of the entire hall focused on me. I saw John. He looked up, staring at me blankly. In his eyes, there was shock, regret, and unspeakable pain. I ignored him, using the most professional and clear language. I presented the epoch-making significance of Regeneration Factor 2.0 to the world. When the clinical trial data for the new technology was displayed on the big screen showing a repair efficiency 10 times that of the previous generation, with 0 side effects, and a cost only 1/10 as much, the hall erupted in prolonged applause. Everyone knew a new era had arrived, and Huaku Biotech, with its pitiful 1.0 technology, had been swept into the dustbin of history. At the end of the launch, after all the formalities were concluded, I didn't leave the stage immediately. I walked back to the center, the spotlight following me once more. Picking up the microphone, I said with a smile, here, at Phoenix Biotech's most glorious moment, I want to give special thanks to one person. The entire hall fell silent, everyone watching me curiously. All media cameras were trained on me. The person I want to thank is the former CEO of Huaku Biotech, Mr. John Wilson. As soon as the name was spoken, the hall buzzed with shock. Every gaze, like a spotlight beam, shot toward John sitting in the front row. He looked up blankly, like a failing student called out in public, utterly at a loss. I watched him, my smile growing brighter. I want to thank him for the $100 million breakup fee he generously gave me at Huaku's IPO celebration banquet. That very money became Phoenix Biotech's first angel round investment. Without that crucial seed funding, Phoenix Biotech might not have been born so quickly, and Regeneration Factor 2.0 might not have been unveiled to the world so soon. So, John, the first raised my microphone toward him from afar, as if toasting. Thank you for making it possible. The moment I finished speaking, the hall fell deathly silent, then exploded with roaring laughter and applause like a landslide or tsunami. Everyone understood the intensely sarcastic thanks. This was the most splendid, yet most brutal, public humiliation. I paid him back in full, with 100-fold, 1,000-fold intensity, using the very method he once humiliated me with, under the mocking, disdainful, and pitying stares of everyone in the hall. John's face flushed beet red. He coughed violently, swaying on his feet, pointing a trembling finger at me, lips quivering, unable to utter a single word. Finally, unable to bear the extreme shame and shock any longer, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed backward, stiff as a board. Chaos erupted at the scene. I stood high on the stage, watching coldly as medical staff carried him away on a stretcher. My heart was calm. Revenge was finally served. After the launch ended, John was rushed to the hospital. But what awaited him was not warm sympathy, but the cold summons from the court, charged with multiple crimes including fraudulent IPO filings, falsified financial reports, and maliciously draining company assets. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and fined an unimaginable, massive penalty. His life came to a disgraceful end, and Sophia Brown, due to commercial espionage and past plagiarism cases, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. This once glamorous perfect couple in the world of fame and fortune finally reunited behind bars. They vanished completely from high society, becoming a laughingstock and topic of conversation during people's leisure time. Phoenix Biology, after the press conference, saw its valuation skyrocket and successfully listed on NASDAQ. On the day of the IPO bell ringing, I wore the same red gown as at the press conference, standing in the trading hall of the NYSE, personally ringing the bell symbolizing wealth and honor. Michael Taylor stood by my side, with undisguised admiration and pride in his eyes. Amid countless camera flashes and cheers, we exchanged smiles. My new office is on the top floor of the city's most prestigious office building, with a 360-degree panoramic city view. I had the check for 100 million yuan framed in the most expensive walnut wood and hung it directly opposite my desk. Next to it hangs a group photo from Phoenix Biology's IPO bell ringing ceremony, featuring me, Michael, and our entire team. Everyone who visits my office sees this peculiar decoration. It constantly reminds me never, ever to dim my light for anyone or anything unworthy. It also reminds me that all humiliation and harm, as long as you are strong enough, will eventually become the brightest metals on your path to success. 3 years later, Phoenix Biology has become the undisputed leader in global biotechnology. As the founder, I graced the cover of Time magazine and was hailed as the woman revolutionizing the future of life sciences. Michael Taylor, by my side, has long evolved from an initial business partner into a lover walking beside me. He appreciates all of me, including my ambition, my edge, and my occasional vulnerability. Our relationship is built on true equality, respect, and soul-deep connection. On this day, I was interviewed on a top domestic financial TV channel, in the brightly lit studio. The host, an intellectual and elegant woman, asked me a question everyone was curious about. Emily Johnson, we all know your legendary entrepreneurial journey. Many wonder how you overcame past betrayal and hurt. Do you still hate that person now? I smiled calmly at the camera. First, it wasn't betrayal. It was a precise screening. My voice broadcast to millions of homes. It helped me eliminate the wrong and inferior choices in my life in a way that, though intense, was highly efficient, letting me move faster and unburdened toward the only right path. As for hate, I shook my head, with a smile of genuine relief. My time and energy are precious. I need to use them to create value, to change the world. Not waste them on pointless emotional drains. Why remember a junk file already deleted from memory? At that very moment, in some greasy, noisy corner of the city, at a 24-hour cheap fast food joint, a man in grimy work clothes, hunched over, struggled to carry a tray piled with dirty dishes through the crowded tables. He was John Wilson, released early from prison, due to good behavior inside. His sentence was reduced, but after getting out, he found the outside world had no place for him. He couldn't land any decent job and ended up here, doing the filthiest, most exhausting work for peanuts. On the wall of the fast food place hung an old TV, playing my interview. John Wilson, tray in hand, froze mid-step. He stared blankly up at the screen, at the radiant, self-assured woman, so familiar, yet so foreign. He had aged considerably, his once handsome face now covered in wrinkles, his eyes dull and filled with regret, resentment, and deep despair. On the television, I was confident, beautiful, and powerful. The world around me was a cloud he could no longer reach, even imagine. What had he pushed away with his own handsome woman, or an era? Crash! The plate in his hand slipped and fell heavily to the ground. Soup, leftovers, and grease spilled everywhere. John Wilson, you dead man. Are you blind? Hurry up and clean this up. Don't you want this month's salary? The restaurant owner's sharp curses rang out. John, however, seemed not to hear, showing no reaction. He just stared obsessively, fixedly, at me on the screen. 2 lines of murky tears silently slid down his deeply lined face. Just an insignificant stranger, I said, and we continued walking forward, calmly, without stopping. Just like that, we passed by the dark alley where he was hiding. The sunlight shone on me again, warm, very warm. For the person hiding in the shadows, there was no longer any ripple in my heart. No love, no hate, not even pity. It was as if he was truly just a background character I happened to pass by on my life's journey. His life, his suffering, his regrets were merely a trivial footnote, already turned over, at the beginning of my brilliant, glorious life. That's all.